I've been wondering a lot this past week of what the psychological effects are and will be of being called a man thousands and thousands of times a day.
Yeah, well, I can see where that might be traumatic. That's Dylan Mulvaney, the Bud Light spokesmodel. Is he a spokesman or a spokeswoman? He's a spokes biological man, a spokes spiritual woman. That one of these guys reminds me of the Daily Mail headline the other day. That she showed her penis to the little girls in the YMCA locker room. She showed her penis. And the Democrat woman that complained that the TSA at JFK Airport, not to use too many abbreviations, the TSA at JFK whacked her in her testicles because, that's that's today's Democrat Party. That's what that is. Well, happy Friday to you and welcome another crazy week on planet Earth, huh? Largely thanks to the Democrat Party, as we sometimes know them. As we all know, however, the Democratic Party isn't. The Democratic Party isn't. Common sense isn't. Common courtesy isn't. Friendly fire isn't. And, of course, the Democratic Party isn't. But never mind all that. We've got a lot of crazy for you because, the Democrats, they didn't sleep much yesterday. So there's a lot going on, a lot of wackiness, a lot of craziness. And I'm going to share as much of it with you as I can today. We have the border, Title 42, came to an end at midnight last night. And it's like, Ma Kettle ringing the dinner bell. Come and get it. Ding, 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 ding. And everybody's rushing the border. And we're talking about 10,000, I think the numbers I was hearing this morning, 10,000 a day to 13,000 a day, right? That's illegal aliens coming. Illegal aliens coming to our border because, the crazy people. And that's how that goes. So if it's 10,000 a day times 365 days, which for Democrats, that's how many days there are in a single year. 10,000 a day, that's 3.6 million illegals coming this year. And they're saying 13,000, and these are just guesstimates, of course. But 13,000 times 365 is 4.745 million people. I whipped out my Bomar calculator, and I added it up. So 13,000 a day, that would be 4.7 million in a single year and, in 365 days because the Democrats are ringing the dinner bell and they have gift baskets. And did you see they have, come and get it? They have, it's like all the ranch hands coming in for beans and, like in Blazing Saddles. And I'll leave it at that. But the Democrats, I'm beginning to think they're not on our side. And the Democrat leader in the House of Representatives, his name is Hakeem Jeffries. And his mentor growing up was a radical, extreme leftist, virulent anti-Semite, college professor, naturally, because where else would you find yourself? College professor. And never mind that, because that's okay. When you're a Democrat, that really doesn't rub off on you at all. You're a Republican if you had lunch in high school with a guy who later became a bad person. Then it clings to you like lint to Michael Moore. Lint clings to Michael Moore because of all the oily, he's very oleaginous. But we'll get to that. Yeah, Hakeem Jeffries. And Leonard Jeffries, his anti-Semitic uncle, but that doesn't really. That he's able to wash that off. That's actually the media washes it off for him. They give him a good hosing down, like a drive-through car wash. Amazing stuff. And he says that his extremist MAGA colleagues have been weaving a fictional account, a fictional argument of what's going on at the border because reality doesn't affect them, and they deny reality, and then the media nods like a gang of lemming. It's pretty extraordinary stuff. I'm telling you. I brought my Washington Post in again today too, for comic relief because they don't cover the news. And once again today, interestingly enough, nothing about the Biden families. I shared with you yesterday the Washington Post. I went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Looking for the story about Congressman James Comer's press conference in the House Oversight Committee and the Biden family's $10 million in ill-gotten gains from countries like Romania and communist China and Ukraine and Russia, of course. And the Washington Post didn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And today I went looking for it. It was like, surely it must be in the newspaper today because they forgot to put it in yesterday. And once again, no, because democracy died in darkness over there. Actually died of autoerotic asphyxiation over at the Washington Post. Their slogan is, "It looks like a newspaper, but it's not." It's a Democrat Party broadsheet. It's a Democrat Party press release. It is nothing more than that. They do have a lead story, their front page above the fold, upper right-hand corner headline, "Record Migrant Surge at Border." How could they know that? They put the paper to bed before 11 p.m., and the Title 42 hadn't even expired. It expired at midnight Eastern time. But they knew it was going to happen because we all knew it was going to happen. Illegal crossings past 10,000 per day is their subheadline there. As pandemic policy ends, officials urge patience. That's what they say, patience. The kind that go to hospitals and take up hospital beds, that kind of patience? No, the other kind. Just shut up and wait over there is the kind of patience that they're urging at the Washington Post, because that's what the Democrat Party has recommended. And pretty amazing stuff. And then the front page above the fold, the next one is 6 decades later, fighting a, quote, racist, end quote, legacy of pollution. Pollution is racist. It's everything. Everything's racist. Speaking of everything being racist, the other big story today is Jordan Neely. Do you know Jordan Neely? Jordan Neely was, according to Al Sharpton, he was a very talented and beloved Michael Jackson impersonator in New York. And ABC News and NBC News, they tell you that too. Jordan Neely also was mentally ill, drug addicted, and had been arrested, depending on which account you prefer, either 42 times or 44 times had been arrested and thrown in the hoosgow, in the can, right there in the can. And Jordan Neely, it's a big story because now the ex-Marine is being charged with terrible crimes that could put him in prison for 15 years. Ex-Marine surrenders to police over New York subway death. Daniel Penny is his name, Daniel Penny. He served in the United States Marine Corps, and that actually works against him with the news media because, you know, if he had been transgender and never served in the Marine Corps, he'd be in much better standing with the American news media, which means the Democrat Party, because, I repeat myself, the news media and the Democrat Party, redundant, repetitive, unnecessarily duplicative. See how that goes? Yeah, so Marine veteran Daniel Perry arrested for manslaughter in Jordan Neely death. Now, never mind the fact that there was an outstanding warrant for him at the time for bashing a woman's head in, and 67-year-old woman. She probably doesn't want everybody going around talking about her age, but I think it's relevant to this telling of this story. And boy, so there he is. Then the Democrats, they're already arranging. They've selected a tree in Central Park, and that George Soros prosecutor there, Alvin Ailey. Just kidding. He's not a dancer. Alvin Bragg. He's bringing the rope because you can't be restraining mentally ill people who are drug crazed, and the woman on the. Assisting him in the former Marine Daniel Perry was, dare I say, because the Democrats need this, an African-American man aiding him in restraining the lunatic Jordan Neely. And part of this started because there was a woman, again, an older woman, on the subway train in New York who said that Jordan Neely was talking about murdering people, including her.
Police say Neely was harassing passengers and making threats, but was not physically violent.
He wasn't physically violent. He was only threatening to kill people and being a completely crazy person, and that's okay. And the man driving the train, I think, is a union guy, so he's okay, was calling 911 to get the police in. But now the Democrats have selected a tree, and they're bringing a George Soros-funded rope, and they're planning on hanging the ex-Marine and throwing him in prison for 15 years because it's a tragic situation, obviously. The poor man died, Jordan Neely. But you know who failed him? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Alvin Bragg and Mayor Eric Adams and every rotten, stinking Democrat that runs that city and throws the mentally ill out on the street to fend for themselves and says, no, really ride the subway all night and menace and threaten people. And then, like the New York Times, that New York Times had a piece the other day saying if you've got a problem with mentally ill people who have been arrested more than 40 times on various crimes that have warrants out for them, if you've got a problem with Jordan Neely riding the subway train and threatening people, then you need therapy. That's what the New York Times wrote. One of their columnists wrote that you need therapy. Now, I mean, again, I played the audio of John F. Kennedy saying we had 530,000 people in mental institutions in the United States in 1963. Now we have a small fraction of that number, and yet our population has increased by 150 million people since then, and a much smaller number of people in mental institutions. I know, see, the Democrats, the government ran not very nice mental institutions. So they said, I know, let's throw them on the street and let them sleep in front of your building and wake up in the morning and scream at old ladies walking by and children and terrorize everyone, because that's the solution that the Democrats have come up with in New York City and across this great land of ours from coast to coast, from Seattle and Tacoma, all the way to Tacoma and Philadelphia, Atlanta, PA, and San Francisco, of course, and Los Angeles, and all the tent cities, and the Democrats are making everything a lot better. We went into a drugstore yesterday, my best girl and I. It was, I don't want to advertise, it was either a CVS or a Walgreens, right? And so many of the shelves were bare, and I mean just bare, that my best girl commented on it first. And I walked down aisles with my arms extended like this, and to walk down the aisles because you can walk like you'd normally be knocking stuff off all the aisles, but there's nothing there. You know why? Democrats. That's why. And the looting. This is actually a store that I made mention of on Monday, because I told you about my best girl and I going into an eyeglasses place. I was looking for some reading glasses, and they didn't have any, and the nice lady there told me that they lock the door. They keep the door locked because Democrats come in and commit strong-arm robberies when they're just walking by, because there are only two women in there, right? And then you see, what is it, the San Francisco guy, we didn't even get to him yesterday, county, what do you call, city supervisor, like a city councilman. He's talking about how he wants to make it illegal for businesses to hire security guards because they're pro-crime and they're pro-criminal and they're anti-business owner and they're anti-civilization in the end. Because when you pull out all of these key elements of society, you lose civilization. And that's what the Democrat Party is pushing. It's quite extraordinary, your Democrat Party. And also, I want to talk about this Jordan Neely versus Daniel Penny story, because this, too, represents the end of civilization. This is a key, can you say linchpin in this circumstance? This is a linchpin issue that if a big, strong man won't intervene in the public square when a crazy man, having been arrested more than 40 times, is threatening to kill people in a public place, and a woman says, my God, he's threatening to kill people, and they're trapped in this confined space in a tunnel underground. And then when you do something about it, and it had obviously an unfortunate outcome, it did, but it was the Democrats that threw Jordan Neely out on the street to fend for himself, and then they lynch you. These are like silent lynchings that the Democrats are perpetrating against people like Jordan Neely by taking our mentally ill and arrested 42 or 44 times, and you just throw them on the street. Give them a 24-hour pass to the subway, and see how that goes. And now we've seen how that goes, and that's not it didn't go well. All right, so those are two big stories today: the border and New York City, the end of civilization. Why is it the end of civilization? I'll explain. We got Hunter Biden's ex-wife. Hard to believe he's got an ex-wife, isn't it? Kathleen Buell, the divorce attorneys say they were all dialed into this whole Romania deal, and the money coming from there. CNN got their highest ratings in ages with the Donald Trump town hall. Mediaite, the left-wing Mediaite, says from now on town halls should be held without people because they like the North Korean model. They call themselves liberals, but they're not. They're leftists. Liberals are furious with CNN. They're always furious about something, aren't they? Yes, they are. We got everybody calling everybody racist, and Now, what was it, MSDNC? No, it was The Blaze, I thought, The View. A non-white person can now be a white supremacist if liberals say that the non-white person is a white supremacist. They've been doing this for quite some time. And you heard a little bit of Dylan Mulvaney, a little concerned that people might not like him or her, whatever. We're at 888-630-9625.
You have every right to be outraged today and angry and never watch this network again.
Hey, Chris here with some exciting news. Now you can listen to me live on the WMAL app. Doesn't matter if you're in your car, in the office, on the go. The WMAL app delivers crystal clear around-the-clock news coverage anywhere with cell service or Wi-Fi. So don't miss a second of your favorite shows. Download the WMAL app today on the Apple App Store or at Google Play Store. All right, we have returned, and Jake Tapper. That was Jake Tapper back there. Oh, it was Manderson Pooper. Sorry, that was Manderson. Yeah, you should never. What did he say, Mike? He said that you should, because they hosted Donald Trump at a town hall meeting, and Trump did very well, and their silly, dim-witted reporter didn't do especially well, Caitlin Collins. Because, as we know, she's not the sharpest bulb in the constellation. So, Manderson.
You have every right to be outraged today and angry and never watch this network again.
You should be outraged and angry. You have every right to be outraged and to be angry and to never watch this network again, like almost everybody in the country already does. And why? Because we know that you don't believe in free speech, in particular for the former president of the United States. He has no constitutional rights, and if he did, they shouldn't be protected. His right to speak in the public square should be trampled like it was by Twitter and Jack Dorsey, that Rasputin impersonator with the funny beard, and he fled the scene of the crime, didn't he? He's gone. Where is he? Where is he now? So living in like a hollowed out portion of Pitcairn Island or something. What a story this country is, I'm telling you. All right, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Matt, listening on the WMAL app from St. Louis, Missouri, in America's heartland. You guys had one of those crazy Soros prosecutors too. She's on her way out the door. Matt, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Happy Fundamental Transformation Day in Idiotopia.
It is Fundamental Transformation Day, isn't it?
It is. And great show on Newsmax. You're getting better each night, so keep it up.
Thank you very much. I think that's true.
I think there's a chance for the judicial and legislative branches to help the executive branch and the slur-in-chief with the border. Recall after the Dobbs leak and then the announcement later, they put up the unscalable fence around the Supreme Court. And we know it was unscalable because the Golden Stream media said so. And then January 6th, they established that police, the standard that police shooting an unarmed trespasser, even a woman, was acceptable behavior. So I think if the Supreme Court will send the unscalable fence to the border and Congress will send the Capitol Police to the border, we could have it locked down, almost immediately.
That is very good thinking. I like that.
Police say was arrested more than 40 times, was known to be struggling with mental illness since his mother's murder in 2007.
His mother was murdered. I've seen reports saying that his mother was murdered when he was 6 years old, and then I've seen reports saying that his mother was murdered when he was a teenager. Turns out his mother was murdered by a Democrat, interestingly enough. Hey, Matt calling from St. Louis, great points, and the clock was ticking. I'm sorry I didn't provide for more time. My apologies, but Matthew in St. Louis made some very strong points about the border, and this is, you may remember, it was just last year because abortion, right? You know how Democrats love abortion. They got a would-be assassin to show up outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house. He was going to murder 3 Supreme Court justices. You still have that Democrat Party clerk in the Supreme Court that leaked the thing to Politico and caused all this pandemonium. How many laws were broken there with all the protests at the Supreme Court justices' homes? All illegal, all violating federal law. None of them arrested. Isn't that amazing? January 6th. None of them arrested. And then what happened to because the news media, remember how they covered the Kyle Rittenhouse story in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and how they haven't covered the would-be assassin outside of Brett Kavanaugh's home with a gun and additional magazines, a pistol and additional magazines and kidnapping tools and burglary tools. And he's a complete mental case, which is fairly standard now for Democrat Party voters. Was he gender non-binary? Because, there's a lot of that going on and shooting a lot of people, and then that disappears from the reporting on the story, too. But I digress. When a Democrat, presumably a clerk in the Supreme Court, leaked that to Politico, a left-wing outlet, I believe it was a woman clerk for Sonia Sotomayor. And those would be the first ones that I would waterboard when getting to the bottom of this. Maybe just symbolically, but we'd see about that. The NBC fake news reported at the time, non-scalable fence erected. Can you say that? Outside Supreme Court amid abortion-related protests. They're abortion-related protests. This is the plaza on which a Democrat self-immolated last year on Earth Day. Came in from Colorado to self-immolate like a Buddhist monk. That is to say, he set himself on fire, with a flammable liquid, and he killed himself. You know why? Because he doesn't want people putting smoke into the air. He didn't, past tense, want people putting smoke in the air. So he set himself on fire at the Supreme Court. Makes good sense, I think. You know how he voted? He voted Democrat. That's how he voted. Non-scalable fence erected. Wait a minute, there's a non-scalable fence? Because didn't all the Democrats and NBC News say that fences don't work at our border? Yet they put this non-scalable fence, and it was erected outside of the Supreme Court amid abortion-related protests. Not riots or mayhem or anything like that, because it's the left, and they can burn and loot as many police cars and businesses as they'd like. And NBC fake news will say that, they're abortion-related protests, mostly peaceful. That's one of the many reasons we have the mostly peaceful T-shirts and mostly peaceful coffee mugs at the Chris Plant store on Al Gore's Amazing Internet. Because, those riots, those arson attacks, all that looting, mostly peaceful. January 6th, not. Riots from coast to coast, including outside the White House, including all over Washington, D.C., where a lot of businesses have never returned, boarded up forever. And, and people don't go downtown like before. So many of the restaurants and sandwich places, lunch places, all closed because went out of business because, the Democrats scared everybody. And then, of course, the Chinese communists with the Wuhan Red Death being loosed on the planet out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which, remember, they lied to us about for about 2 years and said, well, yeah, okay. I know it was obvious all along and we were just lying. But now, yeah, sure, that's what it is. Yeah, so the Chinese communists, with a little help with, from U.S. taxpayer dollars and Anthony Fauci, working on bat-borne coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China, which is in China. I know. Where the communists reign supreme. And then how many people? About 7 million people, they say, died from or maybe with the Wuhan Red Death. Yeah, we have our I Survived the Wuhan Red Death. These are great ones, the T-shirts and the coffee mugs with a bat on them. They're fun. Those are great. I was wearing mine yesterday, I think. Wasn't I? My Wuhan Red Death T-shirt. I've survived the Wuhan Red Death twice. I had it twice just to be sure. First time wasn't enough. So the non-scalable fence, right? But you can't have that. Police said that the 8-foot barrier is similar to the fencing constructed around the Capitol after January 6th. It says the January 6th attack. What about the attack on the White House? How about the suicide attack on the Capitol about 3 months after that, where a police officer actually was murdered? His name was William Evans. The Democrats don't pay much attention to that, do they? Then the police had to shoot the Democrat to death after he murdered one police officer and severely wounded another, crashing his car into them. And so back then, workers began in workers. They call them workers. You know, we Sovietized the language just a few years ago. Now everybody's a worker. They call doctors medical workers now. You're a brain surgeon. NBC News calls you a worker. Workers began installing tall fencing around the Supreme Court Wednesday night after another evening of protests over the leaked opinion that signaled justices plan to overturn Roe versus Wade and return it to the states because, you know, it should be a legislative matter, but the Democrats are too cowardly to take it up as a legislative matter. 8-foot panels of fencing were erected along the south side of the Supreme Court building, which is also across the street from the Capitol. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's where you're gonna find it. That's the Supreme Court is, of course, not the south side of the Supreme Court. That's not across from the Capitol. That's across from the Jefferson Building of the Library of Congress. But pay no attention to that. The barriers replaced smaller bike racks that were removed earlier in the evening. You think bike racks, that'll keep them out. This is your federal government at work. And but wait, if we have non-scalable fencing, why don't we have that along the border? Well, the answer to that is because the Democrats say that fencing doesn't work, except when it protects the Capitol and the Supreme Court. Then it works, and then NBC News tells you that it works, right? So we got that. And Matt from St. Louis also suggested that we send the U.S. Capitol Police down there because they can shoot and kill unarmed women for trespassing. Right? Like Ashley Babbitt, who spent 12 years in the United States Air Force, and then she wasn't really accused of trespassing by anyone. She was just shot and killed by a U.S. Capitol Police officer on the possibility that she might be guilty of trespassing. So if we just go by the U.S. Capitol Police rules, and the news media endorsed this, they applauded this because, January 6th. And it wasn't a Democrat riot. It's the only non-Democrat riot at least since, the 1950s or something. In fact, I think in the 1950s, there was mostly Democrat riots too. But the border, that's another thing altogether, isn't it? All right, let's go to some audio because the border is wide open. And Matt in St. Louis, listening on the WMAL app, said, let's send the U.S. Capitol Police down there because they can shoot unarmed women and kill them without warning, and they don't have to use any non-lethal stuff like the Democrats always say. Right? You don't have to use a nightstick, bop her on the head. Don't use pepper spray because that could sting her eyes. So just shoot her and kill her instead. Don't use a taser because those are kind of fun actually. Watch people spaz out and everything. But no, just shoot and kill, and then later on find out what was going on. So a couple of good suggestions by Matt from St. Louis. Common sense stuff. Let's go to the audio tape. You may remember Barack Obama because this is important to keep in mind. This is not and this is not accidental. This is not incidental. This is not unintentional. This is the Democrat Party's plan. Hey, now there he is. This is the Democrat Party's plan, and it has been for a long time. It is. It's what Barack Obama, and look, Joe Biden said almost exactly the same thing about fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
And listen to the crowd go wild. See, the crowd goes wild because they're Democrats, and they couldn't wait to wreck the country. They got the throngs, the mobs on board, the would-be Supreme Court assassins, the rioters, the looters, the burn your police car neighbors and all that stuff. 5 days away. And that's what Matt started with, actually, out of St. Louis. Welcome to Fundamental Transformation Day. Today is, once again, Fundamental Transformation Day. I'm at Matt. Is it okay if I use that? Because that's pretty good. Today is Fundamental Transformation Day. It's May 12th. Should have been May Day. Should have been May 1st that it expired, International Bolshevik Day. But there it is. Today is yet another Democrat Party scheduled and programmed Fundamental Transformation Day. And always keep in mind, don't you worry about all these illegal aliens coming in, speaking from at least 116 different countries. I mean, we've got Romania. I assume they paid the Biden family. China, you know how many we've had come in from China? Huge, giant numbers of thousands, throngs of people coming in from China. That's not Mexico. That's not, what do they call it? The Golden Triangle, or what do they call it? The crazy triangle in Central America. And no, we got them from Eastern Europe and we got Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. We got all the stands, I think, included. Barack Obama warning us back then we should have paid attention. What was it? Was it Maya Angelou said, when someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time?
You need to make sure your child can speak Spanish.
See, that's what you need to do. Why would you do that? Because you're going to bring in, and then who did we have? Who was it? Hank Johnson the other day, the Democrat congressman, saying that we need all the illegal aliens to cut our lawns and clean our dishes. The Democrat Party, the party of the Confederate States of America and Jim Crow, they got to keep that cheap labor. Around. So this is about the fundamental transformation of America. And he warned us we all better learn to speak Spanish. And then you remember him pretending to speak Spanish, cinco de cuatro, and that's it. See, he's rich enough now. He's got translators that can speak to his servants for him at his Hawaiian oceanfront mansion, where he tore down the mansion from Magnum PI to build something better. I always kind of liked that one myself. And his multi-million-dollar oceanfront estate in Martha's Vineyard. And he's got a multi-million-dollar estate off of Embassy Row in Washington, D.C. And do they still have their multi-million-dollar house in Chicago? It's good to be a Democrat, isn't it? It's very good. There is a Republican member of the House of Representatives by the name of Debbie Lesko. Debbie Lesko. Have you heard of Debbie Lesko? She is an Arizona member of the House of Representatives from Arizona. And she was on the television this morning talking about the expiration of Title 42.
Before Title 42 had expired, it was already in a crisis. And now even the Biden administration is projecting there's going to be 10 to 13,000 people that are trying to cross the border each and every day. In Yuma, Arizona, the mayor of Yuma has asked the president to declare a national emergency so he can get FEMA help, so he can get National Guard help. It's a total disaster.
Well, total disaster is what the Democrat Party's program is, right? That's Debbie Lesko, Republican member of the House from Arizona, saying that the Border Patrol is predicting 10,000 to 13,000 a day. And again, 10,000 a day in a year is 3.6 million. 13,000 a day in a year is 4.7 million. We've already had varying numbers, but maybe 5 or 5.5 million in the first 2 years of the Biden administration. And the news media is good with this. You're a racist if you notice it, because that's the Debbie Lesko.
I think it's purposeful. I mean, I've been in Congress now for a while, and I've seen all the legislation that has been passed through the Democrat-controlled Congress, and it's purposeful. They want an open border. For what end goal, I do not know. I can only guess.
It's the fundamental transformation of America, and you better learn to speak Spanish, because they're bringing down the United States of America. They don't like the United States of America. And they have power now, the power to destroy. They are the left. They're not liberals. They're the left. And they are not on our side. For how many years do I have to say this before everyone agrees with me? Debbie Lesko on the border, talking about the Biden administration. And then, the Democrats, they had total government dominance for 2 years. And what did they do? What was their plan?
They had 2 years in total control of the House, the Senate, the presidency. They did nothing to secure the border. And these people even the immigrants are being hurt by the cartels. Girls are being sold into sex slavery. This is something that the Democrats and Biden are complicit in. They're doing absolutely nothing to help our country be secured. It's awful.
It's awful. It is awful. And, the Debbie Lesko cares. She's in a border state, because we're all border states now, aren't we?
As you see in the polling, Americans want a secure border. They want to know who's crossing the border. We're a compassionate nation. We have over 1 million people a year that legally immigrate to the United States. That's more than any other country in the entire world. But we can't just let everybody and anybody into our country without screening them, without vetting them. There has been Border Patrol agents that said that they're not even vetting the adults that these children, unaccompanied children, are going to. They're being sold into sex slavery. This is outrageous. If the Democrats and Biden want to be compassionate to these illegal immigrants, they need to secure the border and get this under control.
Well, it's the party of Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton's internship program. And who was, I think it was Hank Johnson saying we need people to scrub our dishes and clean our floors, which is, that's your Democrat rhetoric for you. We have more on this and the New York City subway calamity, what this says about the Democrats' plan to end civilization.
Any single element of this framework would fundamentally be viewed as a fundamental change in America. Taken together, they're truly consequential.
Have no immigration, then we would have no food on our plates. We would have nobody taking care of the building, the construction of our homes. We would have nobody cleaning up in the hospitals.
Got to have people cleaning up in the hospitals, so you need illegal immigration. Hank Johnson, Democrat, he thinks that islands in the Pacific will flip over if you put too many people on one side of the island. Not a geologist. I'd say, I'm not a biologist. What am I supposed to know what a woman is just to serve on the Supreme Court? Hank Johnson, not a geologist. What? Islands don't flip over if you put 20 Marines on one side of the island? You're a Democrat party. I have been advised to share with you that we are now posting our daily stories sheet that Michael Piercy and I assemble with stories. Today's is kind of a short one, actually, so it won't take too much time. But it has the stories that we put together for the big radio broadcast today, Michael Piercy and I. And you can find it at the Twitter, you can find it at the Facebook, and you can find it at the WMAL website, our mothership station in Washington, D.C., from which we broadcast throughout the universe to the largest, smartest radio audience in the history of the world. But the story sheet, Plant Stories List Friday 5-12, is now available for your perusal and approval at the Chris Plant Twitter, the Chris Plant Facebook, and at the mothership website, the WMAL website. So you can, we're talking about CNN ratings and talking about Manderson Pooper cursing up and the angry lefties cursing up a storm at him. We've got those and the subway killing in New York. We've got all that stuff on the stories list. So you can say, hey, what was he talking about? Well, here it is.